So if our production's cut and we begin importing food, that would raise the cost of food globally.
Officials have come up with the slogan, "Fight the drought, dig the well." At this site, they've been working for about a week now, and the plan is to dig 60 meters deep into the ground.
Pulling up groundwater to irrigate the fields. It's a strategy officials have deployed time and again, but by tackling one problem, they've created another. Groundwater in China is fast disappearing, with workers boring deeper and deeper every year. Depressions dot the North China Plain here, where the earth floor sinks into former water cavities. Combined with the fact much of the water in the country is polluted, that leaves very little fresh water for farmers to use and people to drink. Farmer Kong Ling-he did not wait for the government to step in, but in desperation dug his own well to save his wheat crop.
In the beginning, I could pull water up every 2 days. Then, every 15. There's less and less.
After this, there is nothing else. When water tables fall, springs dry up, rivers stop flowing, and lakes disappear. The well-intentioned efforts here will actually dig China into a deeper hole. Melissa Chan, AlJazeera, Shandong Province, China.
Now, the NASCAR series in the US is well known for its frequent crashes, but this year's Daytona 500 was even more chaotic than usual.
Boogity, boogity, boogity. Let's go racing, boys!
The event is known as the Great American Race and is the most prestigious on the NASCAR calendar. This year's was also one of the most dramatic, as on the 29th lap, most of the field were caught up in a multiple car pileup. That crash resulted in one of a record 16 cautions during the race.
Michael, look at... Nope, didn't make it.
This is Al Jazeera, and these are the stories making the headlines now. Witnesses tell Al Jazeera more than 60 people have been killed in violence on Monday in the Libyan capital, Tripoli. The son of Libyan leader Muammar al-Gaddafi is warning of a civil war if anti-government protests continue to spread. The warning has failed to halt those demonstrations, though. Anti-government protesters say they've taken control of Libya's second city, Benghazi. And eyewitnesses tell Al Jazeera the cities of Al-Bayda and Sabha are also in the hands of protesters. Well, the son of the Libyan leader, Muammar al-Gaddafi, appeared on state television warning of civil war.
We will not give up Libya. We will fight until the last man, the last woman, until the last bit of energy. We will not leave our country to let Al Jazeera laugh at us, Al Arabiya or the BBC or any traitors who live abroad. We will not allow that.
Well, in Yemen, witnesses in the southern city of Aden say a teenager has been killed and 4 others wounded in fighting with soldiers. Protesters have gathered in the capital Sana'a for an 11th straight day of anti-government demonstrations. President Ali Abdullah Saleh is describing calls for regime change as unacceptable. A group calling itself the Youth of February the 14th are calling for security officials to be tried for attacks on protesters in Bahrain. A new day of protests began on Monday for crowds camped out at Pearl Roundabout in the capital. Well, they say they want the entire ruling Al Khalifa monarchy to go. An Indian courts upheld the death sentence for the sole surviving gunman of the 2008 Mumbai attacks. Mohammad Ajmal Amir Qasab was found guilty last May for his part in the attacks, which killed 166 people and wounded more than 300. His lawyers have appealed, saying they didn't get enough time to read the 11,000-page charge sheet before the case began. A suicide blast in Afghanistan's Kunduz province has killed at least 26 people and wounded 36 others. The bomber detonated explosives at the entrance to a government office where people were queuing for ID cards. Local officials say all of the dead are civilians, including children. And a suicide bomber in Iraq has killed at least 10 people and wounded 15 others. The attack occurred in the northern city of Samarra, targeting a police building. Those are the headlines. We'll be back with another update at the top of the hour.
Across Libya, protesters are still calling for Gaddafi to leave. with reports of security forces killing civilians and using African militias to crush the Libyans' revolt. Will Muammar Gaddafi's regime prevail where others fell to the will of the people? This is Inside Story. Hello and welcome to the program. I'm Hazem Sika. Witnesses from Libya's second largest city of Benghazi say that dozens of people killed on Saturday when troops opened fire on anti-government protesters in the city. They also spoke of snipers firing at protesters from rooftops and a number of foreign mercenaries from sub-Saharan Africa being brought in to attack protesters. Some of those so-called mercenaries were caught by protesters and confessed that they had received instructions to fire live bullets at demonstrators. Stephanie Decker has more.
The streets of Benghazi on Saturday, a fierce battle and the scene of death and violence.
I have cousins who are in the streets whose friends have been killed right in front of them. The killings are just going on. Bodies are piled everywhere. The numbers that they announce on TV are nowhere to compare. They're just firing people. Sniper shooters are on the rooftop. Every house, every single house.
In the morgue, one man takes a last look at his relative and murmurs, he was not armed. Also from Benghazi, this video, which we cannot independently verify, claims to show what protesters believe is a mercenary, a hired killer, contracted by the Libyan regime to attack demonstrators.
These are the mercenaries. These are the people he is using to help him. He has been shot in the heart.
And the unrest is spreading across the country. Here in Al-Baidiyah, thousands gather near the main mosque, another city rocked by days of protests against the country's leadership. Chanting "There's no God but Allah," mourners carry the body of one of those killed. And there's more chaos. Anti-Gaddafi graffiti sprayed on walls and a voice through a loudspeaker saying, "There's no state here." Reports of casualties are running high and constantly rising. The city's hospital overwhelmed. The morgue is filled with bodies, and more is still coming. On Libyan state television, the first signs that the country is in difficulty. Images of burning buildings, a result of the protests. They're blaming foreign forces for trying to destabilize the country. But while thousands of Libyans remain on the streets in various cities across the country, it's becoming harder and harder to ignore their calls. Stephanie Decker for Inside Story.
Well, joining us now to talk more about this issue are our guests. In London, Ashur Shamis, he's a Libyan opposition activist. In Nairobi, Ali Khan Satu, a financial analyst and the CEO of Rich Investment. And also in London, Ian Black, Middle East editor at The Guardian. Gentlemen, I want to welcome all of you to the programme. Ashur Shamis, if I could start with you. Now, we know information coming out of Libya has been pretty sketchy over the last few days, given the wide media and communication crackdown inside the country. Just tell us a little bit about some of the accounts that you've been hearing about what's happening from inside Libya.
Well, what we are hearing is that tension is growing all over the country, that there is a strong opposition